What's up, everyone? John Rettinger from TechnoBuffalo here with a full review of the mid-2010 iPod Touch refresh. Let's see if it's worth the money. So being a touch-only device, the first thing you're going to see and what you're going to use most with the iPod Touch is the display, which has now been completely updated to include the iPhone 4's retina display, which is going to give you a whopping resolution of 960 by 640 with 326 pixels per inch. And that's just fancy talk for saying the screen is gorgeous. I've talked about the retina display on countless occasions in iPhone 4 videos, but suffice it to say it looks just as good on the iPod Touch. Looking at older generation iPod Touches and older generation iPhones for that matter, you really can't see a difference with the screen. It's the highest resolution screen right now on the market, and it really does show and just pops. Images and text really look very crystal clear. Text you can zoom all the way in, you get no pixelation. And images, I mean they're high res, really do look quite nice on the screen. So one of the cool things I've always liked about the iPod Touch has been how thin they are. And this generation iPod Touch got even thinner, which is super crazy. Coming in now at 0.28 inches thick. And this thing is, I mean, razor thin. To give you a comparison, the iPhone 4 is certainly no fat boy, but it looks downright chubby next to its Touch cousin. Really very impressive. However, this thin design does bring some annoyances that I found while using the iPod Touch. Something to keep in mind. If you flip it over, we'll talk about some of the stuff on the back in a little bit. It is tapered, so it's rounded on the sides and rounded on the top. So the lock and power button, when using the device, you expect it to sort of just push here to be able to hit it. You actually have to almost lift up the device and hit the button down below. See, it's right there, so you hit the top, you're not going to be making contact. So it does become a little bit of annoying if you're used to using an iPhone, for example. You're going to have to sort of reconfigure how your fingers are, something that I just found to be a bit of a pain. And the same thing is going to be true with the volume buttons on the left. So this is also packing the A4 system on a chip, clocking in at just about 1 gigahertz. And this thing is very fast. Certainly it's capable of handling, all the multitasking that iOS 4 is going to bring, but it also now is going to be very capable of handling the 3D games that are making their way into the App Store. So a lot of the racing games and all the such are now going to be able to perform as they would on an iPhone 4. You're going to be able to really get that as immersive graphics on a mobile device. So certainly kudos to Apple for doing that. Really one of the big changes that most people are talking about are the addition of 2 cameras. We've got one guy on the front, you can see him right there, and we've got one guy on the back, and they both serve similar yet different purposes. The one on the front is primarily going to be used for FaceTime video calls, which has finally made their way to the iPod Touch. We've been hearing rumors of a front-facing camera on an iPod Touch for what seems like eons now. The fact that this mythical unicorn is finally here is probably going to make some people quite happy. You may have seen my demonstration video I did on FaceTime. It works very well. You just register an email address and essentially call that email address, and it works from iPhone 4 to iPod Touch and vice versa. And hopefully someday we'll have a desktop client that'll work with this as well. We'll take VGA quality photos, and so not too bad, not great. You're not going to want to blow these things up, put them on a wall, but we'll take some pictures on the front. On the back, we have a camera capable of taking HD video, and that is HD at 720p. We record up to 30 frames per second with audio, and we'll take still photos as well at a 960 by 720 with the back camera. In this case, you were wondering, there's no LED flash here or anything, just the little camera. It's kind of lonely on the back. We do have an all-new aluminum design. You don't have that little black plastic panel for the Wi-Fi. Supposedly the aluminum is going to allow for the signal to come in and out. And since it's not an iPhone, you're not going to have signal drop issues because it doesn't have a cellular radio, which is probably why this sucker is so thin. And speaking of cellular radio, this is now very much more iPhone 4-like minus the phone. Everything the iPhone 4 can do, this guy can do as well, except for make phone calls. However, if you couple this with a Skype or voice over IP application and using the built-in microphone that this sucker's got, you pretty much have a phone with you all the time if you have sort of a MiFi or any device that's always going to kick out a Wi-Fi signal. I've never been the biggest fan of the iPod Touch line. Primarily I've been using an iPhone, so I never had much of a need for an iPod Touch. However, this is the first generation iPod Touch that I think really fills a very big niche First, for FaceTime, you're now going to have people that can video chat really more widespread. For example, this unit here, I am going to let my sister and brother-in-law use. My dad has an iPhone 4, and my sister and brother-in-law do not, and they live a little far apart, so now my dad will be able to see his grandchildren all the time without having to tell them how to use Skype, which if you ever tried to teach your parents how to use a computer, you know can be quite difficult. So that's just from personal experience. However, if you are an iPod Touch fan, you're going to be getting much more of what you love with the iPod Touch. You're getting the great multi-touch browser based on the WebKit open standard, so it's going to work very, very, very well. It's probably one of the best browsers around. I've compared this to other Android devices, BlackBerry devices, and Palm WebOS devices. Still, the iPhone has the best browser around. Still, I find it a bit weird. The 3.5mm headset jack is on the bottom, but I guess if you're using an iPod Touch, you're probably used to that. So if you've been looking to get an iPhone, and you want an iPhone, we don't want to switch carriers to AT&T, the iPod Touch is probably going to be a perfect way for you to go. However, if you decide to do that, it is not going to come cheap. The 8GB model is going to cost you $229. The 32 gig is going to bump you up to just about $300. And if you want to go for the granddaddy of iPod Touches, you want 64 gigs for $399. So not cheap. Not cheap at all. But you're not stuck with a contract. So this isn't going to be a review of Apple's product lines or what you think of Apple. This is a review of just the product itself. This product itself is still the best and the preeminent media player on the market. And it's very hard to not like it. It just works very well. The App Store adds a ton of functionality. In addition of FaceTime, the cameras, and now the new processor and the retina display really just are nice value adds. So it already was a very solid product. So on a 1 to 5 scale, the iPod Touch in the realm of portable media players, really comparing to the likes of the Zoom and some of the SanDisk players and some others, it's very hard to not give this a perfect 5 stars. It is very expensive, as tend to be with Apple products, but you know, you're getting a decent amount there. Price aside, this really has everything that you could want from a media player. So, on a 1 to 5 scale, as I just mentioned, this is going to get a 5. Do you agree or disagree? Am I drinking Apple Kool-Aid, or am I right on target? Love to hear what you guys have to say. I am John Rettinger from TechnoBuffalo. Be sure to check out the website for all your tech news. For exclusive content, check me out at Twitter, twitter.com/John4Lakers. And all those links, some will be right down below. So be sure to check those out. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.